Imagine a silent armada, lost beneath the waves for decades, their secrets swallowed by the ocean. What if I told you the Soviet Union built an entire ghost fleet, powerful submarines that simply vanished? Join us as we dive deep into the chilling, untold stories of these sunken giants, uncovering a hidden chapter of naval history that will leave you questioning everything. September 2000, the Barents Sea, 200 miles north of Murmansk. Norwegian seismic researchers are conducting routine mapping of the ocean floor when their equipment detects something unexpected. A large metal object, unmistakably man-made, sitting in 400 feet of water. The coordinates are recorded. The data is analyzed. And then someone in the Norwegian government makes a phone call to Moscow. "We found something," they say, "and we think you're going to want to know about it." 3 weeks later, Russian naval officials arrived at the site with deep-sea cameras. What they see on the monitors makes them go pale. It's a submarine, a Soviet submarine, Oscar II class, over 500 feet long, nuclear-powered, and according to all official records, it shouldn't exist, except it does, and it's not alone. Welcome to the Ghost Fleet, the secret graveyard of Soviet submarines that the world was never supposed to know about. This is their story. To understand the Ghost Fleet, you need to understand the Cold War at sea. While the world watched missiles and tanks facing off across the Iron Curtain, the real war, the silent war, was happening beneath the waves. The Soviet Union built submarines like other countries built tanks. Hundreds of them, maybe even thousands, depending on which intelligence estimates you believe. They built ballistic missile submarines that could strike American cities from beneath the Arctic ice. They built attack submarines designed to hunt American carriers. They built special operations submarines for inserting commandos and conducting espionage. And they built them fast, sometimes too fast. Soviet shipyards operated 24 hours a day. Welders worked in conditions that would be illegal anywhere else in the world. Quality control was secondary to meeting production quotas. Safety regulations were suggestions, not requirements. The Communist Party wanted submarines, and they wanted them now. Igor Kurdin worked as a welder at the Sevmast shipyard in the 1980s. Years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, he gave an interview to a Western journalist. His words were chilling. "We knew we were building coffins," he said. "We knew the welds were weak. We knew the systems were unreliable. But if you complained, if you slowed down production, you disappeared. So we built submarines that we knew would kill their crews, and we went home at night and tried not to think about it." How many submarines did the Soviet Union lose during the Cold War? The official Russian answer is 9. 9 submarines lost to accidents, mechanical failures, and training incidents between 1945 and 1991. The actual number is probably closer to 50, maybe more. Nobody knows for certain, because when a Soviet submarine went down, the state didn't just lose a vessel, it lost a state secret, and state secrets don't get reported. They get buried, sometimes literally. K-8, February 1970, a Golf II-class ballistic missile submarine operating in the Bay of Biscay. A fire breaks out in the torpedo compartment. The crew fights it for 3 days, but the damage is catastrophic. The submarine begins to sink. The captain orders an evacuation. Most of the crew makes it to life rafts, but 52 men remain aboard, trying to save their vessel until the very end. They go down with the submarine into 16,000 feet of water. The Soviet Navy immediately declares the area off limits. They claim it's for recovery operations, but no recovery is ever attempted. Instead, Soviet ships patrol the area for months, warning away any Western vessels that come close. They're not protecting a recovery operation. They're protecting a secret, because K-8 was carrying something. Nuclear warheads. How many? The Soviets never said. Western intelligence estimated 4, possibly more. Those warheads are still down there, somewhere in the dark, corroding slowly in the salt water. The Soviet Union reported the loss, eventually, but they didn't mention the exact location, they didn't mention the nuclear weapons, and they certainly didn't mention that this was the 3rd submarine they'd lost that year. K-27, May 1968, a November-class attack submarine. The reactor develops a leak, flooding the compartment with radioactive steam. 26 crew members die from radiation exposure. The survivors manage to bring the submarine back to base, but the contamination is so severe that the vessel is deemed beyond repair. So what does the Soviet Navy do with a radioactive submarine? They tow it out to the Kara Sea, fill it with concrete and scrap metal to make it sink faster, and drop it into shallow water, only 100 feet deep. They don't tell anyone, not the local population, not the fishing fleets that operate in the area, not their own Navy personnel who might need to know that there's a nuclear reactor sitting on the seabed, slowly leaking radiation into the Arctic ecosystem. K-27 sits there today. 40 feet of radioactive metal close enough to the surface that sport divers could theoretically reach it if they knew it was there, and if they didn't mind the radiation. K-219, October 1986. A Yankee Rye-class ballistic missile submarine patrolling off the coast of Bermuda. A missile tube begins to leak. The crew tries to contain it, but the chemicals used in missile fuel are violently reactive with seawater. An explosion tears through the submarine. The crew fights for 3 days to save their vessel. A 20-year-old seaman named Sergei Preminin volunteers to go into the flooded reactor compartment to manually lower the control rods and prevent a nuclear meltdown. He succeeds. The reactor is shut down safely, but Preminin can't get back out. The hatch is jammed. He drowns when the compartment floods. His sacrifice saves the submarine from becoming a nuclear catastrophe, but it doesn't save the submarine. K-219 sinks in 18,000 feet of water, carrying 16 nuclear missiles and 2 nuclear reactors to the bottom. The Soviet Union claims they offered to let the United States help with recovery operations. The United States says no such offer was ever made. What everyone agrees on is that nothing was recovered. The submarine, the missiles, the reactors, all of it is still down there. And here's the thing about K-219. It sank in international waters, relatively close to the American coast. The U.S. Navy knows exactly where it is. They've probably surveyed it extensively, but they don't talk about it. Because talking about it means admitting they're monitoring a nuclear wreck site, which means revealing intelligence capabilities, which means showing their hand in the silent war beneath the waves. So K-219 becomes a ghost, acknowledged but unexamined, known but secret. One more submarine in the ghost fleet. But the story that changed everything, the incident that finally forced the world to pay attention to the ghost fleet, happened in August 2000. K-141, the Kursk, Oscar II-class cruise missile submarine, state-of-the-art, the pride of the Northern Fleet, crew of 118 men, the best trained in the Russian Navy. They're participating in a major naval exercise when an explosion tears through the torpedo compartment. The blast is so powerful that seismic stations in Norway register it as a minor earthquake. A second explosion follows seconds later, even larger than the first. The Kursk sinks to the bottom of the Barents Sea in less than 2 minutes. 23 men survive the initial explosions. They retreat to the aft compartments and seal themselves in. They have emergency breathing apparatus. They have survival suits. They have everything they need except time. Because here's where the story gets dark. The Russian government knows the Kursk has sunk. They know men are alive in the wreckage, and they refuse help. Norway offers rescue vessels, denied. Britain offers submarine rescue systems, denied. The United States offers deep-sea recovery equipment, denied. For 5 days, the Russian government insists they have the situation under control. For 5 days, international rescue teams wait, ready to help, while Russian ships fumble with inadequate equipment. On the 6th day, Norwegian divers finally reach the Kursk. Everyone inside is dead. They died from carbon dioxide poisoning, suffocating slowly in the darkness, while the world waited for Russia to accept help. Lieutenant Captain Dmitry Kolesnikov, one of the survivors, left a note. Written in the dark, using the last of his strength, he described what happened. The explosions, the flooding, the desperate wait for rescue that never came. None of us can get to the surface, he wrote. It's dark here to write, but I'll try by feel. It seems like there are no chances, 10 to 20%. Let's hope that someone will read this. Here's the list of personnel from the sections who are now in the 9th and will attempt to get out. Regards to everybody, no need to despair. The note was found when the Kursk was eventually raised in 2001. By then, the Russian government had already spun multiple stories about what happened. Equipment failure, collision with a foreign submarine, even sabotage. But the Kursk disaster did something the Soviet Union had successfully avoided for 50 years. It made the Ghost Fleet real. It forced Russia to admit that their submarines were fallible, that their crews were vulnerable, that the silent service had casualties. And once that admission was made, other stories started to surface. After the fall of the Soviet Union, some secrets became less secret. Archives were opened, at least partially. Veterans started talking. Intelligence agencies declassified old reports. And slowly, the true scope of the Ghost Fleet began to emerge. The Norwegian Nuclear Safety Authority started investigating. Using a combination of Russian archives, intelligence reports, and deep-sea surveys, they created a map. A map of known and suspected submarine wrecks in Arctic waters. They found dozens of submarines that Russian authorities never officially acknowledged losing. Submarines that went on patrol and never came back. Submarines that were reported as decommissioned or scrapped, but actually sank during training exercises or transit operations. Some are in shallow water, leaking radiation slowly into the Arctic ecosystem. Some are in deep trenches, crushed by pressure, their nuclear reactors sealed by the sheer weight of the ocean above them. Some are in international waters. Some are in what Russia considers its territorial seas, off limits to foreign investigation. Most of them still have their crews inside, entombed in steel coffins on the ocean floor. Their families never told what really happened. Just that there was an accident, that their husband or son or father wouldn't be coming home, that it was classified, that it was necessary for the security of the state. Anatoly Sagalovich, a Russian deep-sea explorer, has visited several of these wrecks. He describes them as haunting. You see personal effects through the portholes, he says. Photographs. Letters. You know there are men inside, still at their stations, still waiting for rescue that will never come. It's a grave, but it's a grave that nobody acknowledges. The radiation is a problem too. Most Soviet submarines use liquid metal reactors, which are more efficient than Western designs, but also more dangerous if they fail. When seawater breaches these reactors, it creates a slow radioactive leak. Not enough to be dangerous on the surface, but enough to contaminate the local ecosystem, enough to potentially enter the food chain. Norwegian researchers have found elevated radiation levels near several wreck sites. Russian authorities insist the levels are safe. Norwegian authorities are less certain. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. The wrecks are dangerous, but perhaps not immediately catastrophic. Yet, the problem is time. These submarines have been on the ocean floor for decades. Corrosion is accelerating. Containment structures are failing. What's safe today might not be safe in 10 years, or 5, or next year, and nobody's doing anything about it. Because acknowledging the problem means acknowledging the wrecks. Acknowledging the wrecks means revealing how many submarines the Soviet Union actually lost. Revealing that number means admitting that the Soviet Navy was far less competent than it claimed to be. And that's a secret Russia still isn't ready to reveal. So the Ghost Fleet remains, scattered across the Arctic seabed. Dozens of submarines, hundreds of nuclear warheads, multiple nuclear reactors. A secret that's somehow both known and hidden, acknowledged and denied. The crews remain too. Thousands of men who died in the service of a state that doesn't exist anymore. Men whose families were told they couldn't know how their loved ones died because it was classified. Men whose graves can't be visited because officially they don't exist. There's a memorial in Murmansk, the base city for Russia's Northern Fleet. It's a tower sculpture, stylized like a submarine sail, honoring submariners lost at sea. On certain days, you can see old women there, mothers and widows leaving flowers for men who died decades ago. They don't know exactly where their loved ones are. They don't know exactly how they died, but they know about the Ghost Fleet. Everyone in Murmansk knows. It's one of those secrets that's not secret at all. Everyone knows and everyone agrees not to talk about it. Except now people are talking. Organizations like Bologna and the Norwegian Nuclear Safety Authority are demanding action. They want the wrecks surveyed properly. They want the radiation monitored. They want plans developed for eventual recovery or containment. Russia resists, not because they don't care, but because opening up the Ghost Fleet means opening up 50 years of secrets. It means admitting how many submarines they lost. It means revealing how many men died in accidents that were preventable. It means acknowledging that the Soviet Union's submarine force was built on a foundation of acceptable losses. And so the ghost fleet remains beneath the waves, slowly corroding, slowly leaking, slowly releasing its secrets into the dark water of the Arctic. Will they ever be raised? Probably not. The cost would be enormous. The technical challenges are immense, and the political will simply doesn't exist. Will the truth ever be fully told? Maybe. As more archives open, as more veterans speak out, as more time passes and old Cold War sensitivities fade, the Ghost Fleet's story becomes clearer. But for now they remain. Dozens of submarines, thousands of men. A secret cemetery on the ocean floor, visited only by deep-sea fish and the occasional research submersible. The Soviet Union's Ghost Fleet, a monument to ambition, sacrifice, secrecy, and the terrible cost of the Cold War's silent service. They sailed into the dark, and in the dark they remain.